Discovering your passion and purpose permits you the opportunity to pull out a chair and come to the table of inclusion and be privy to moments of impact in the lives of others. For Corey Poirier, he knows all about maximizing your level of influence. He's a multi-time TEDx speaker. He's also the host of the top-rated Let's Do Influencing radio show. He's also a best-selling author and has interviewed over 6,500 of the world's top influencers and can share stories about the healthy, the wealthy, and the wise. So he joined me this week to do just that. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So, Corey, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to talk to you about how you help people maximize their influence. Great to be with you this afternoon, and thanks so very much for being here.
I'm super excited to be here, Kevin. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely, Corey. So my first question for you is a toss-up for you in terms of telling me how do you think you define maximizing your personal influence?
Wow. So maximizing one's personal influence, I guess how I define it is discovering your purpose and what you're called here to do. And there's a great Bob Dylan quote where he said, I'm a success if every day I wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, and in between I do that which I love. So I think when you do that which you love at the highest level, that's really maximizing your influence, because you're going to want to help other people, you're going to want to support people, you're going to want to reach and impact more people. So I feel like if you're doing what you were called to do, if you're living on purpose, that's the best way you can maximize it. And of course, Kevin, I'm happy to talk about strategies for doing that, but that's how I'd say, to me, that's how I define maximizing, is really just living on purpose.
Yeah, so let's dive into those strategies. What are some tangible steps people can take to maximize their influence, in your opinion?
So, I feel one thing that a person can do is make sure that they are reaching people where their people are. So whoever their followers are, whoever the people that they're going to influence, they should find a way to be in front of them. So what I mean by that is, if it's podcasting, so if the people that are your type of people that you feel that you can impact and influence listen to podcasts, then obviously you should make sure you're on podcasts. If you work best with video and you know that you're going to reach the people that you can influence best through video, then you should make sure that you're using video, whether that's making videos or whether that's being interviewed on video. But you should be really figuring out what your sweet spot is, and then making sure that you are there, like you are present in those places. And then the other thing I think you can do is help other people become influencers. So, help other people become better leaders. And when you do that, you are exponentially increasing your potential to influence other people's lives as well. So those are some strategies that I would typically imply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've had plenty of practice talking to influencers, because you've interviewed over 6,500 people, and you tell me you can provide some timeless secrets when it comes to health and wellness and being wise. So I'm wondering if you could share those secrets with me this afternoon, or some of them anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the big ones is I call it the power of no. So one of the things I discovered, Kevin, is that top level influencers say no way more often, to the tune of probably 50 plus times more often than the average person. So when people ask, can you do this? Can you do that? They're usually saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't take that on right now. I already have a full plate. And I feel like that helps your health, and it also helps your wealth, because you're spending your time doing the few things that will move the needle for you, that will make the biggest difference. And you're not spending your time doing the things that won't make the biggest difference. And by doing that, you're not taking on as much as somebody else. So you're not stressing yourself out, but then also you're maximizing your time by just focusing on what you were called to do. And so one secret I would say that the top influencers have learned is to say no when they have to, and say no more often than most people, and actually have the ability to do that. So that would be one of the timeless secrets, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. Corey, for me personally, I'm working on that because, when I get asked to do something, my instant reaction is to always say yes. So my new philosophy is, if it's not on my schedule, I don't do it. So there you go.
I love it. Amazing. Did you want me to share any more of those secrets?
Absolutely. If you have more to share, we have all the time in the world, buddy.
Okay, well, sounds good. So I guess a second secret would be that and I'll call it lifelong learning. So they actually spend their time becoming lifelong learners. So they don't finish learning whenever the school officially ends. They believe in self-educating long after that. And so one of the things I've noticed is some of the people I interview that are now in their 70s, they're still going to seminars and taking notes. They're still listening to podcasts. They're still watching videos. They're still hoping to pick up that one new thing. Whereas a lot of other people stop learning as soon as they finish their formal education. And so I just say, I really define it by saying lifelong learners are leaders. And I believe this is something that's been the same since the beginning of time. Because if you look back at the days of, the Henry Fords, the Thomas Edisons, if you look back then, they all had personal libraries, even if they only finished grade 3. And so I think another secret is that if you can invest in lifelong learning, you're going to always grow, you're always going to develop, and you're probably going to jump ahead of the person that isn't willing to invest in lifelong learning. So that's another secret, is lifelong learners are leaders.
Well, I always say that life is a constant game of networking. And, Corey, one of the principles that I live my life by is the day you stop learning is the day that you effectively die, because we all have to be sponges, because we don't have the answers to all of life's problems. And the more perspective we can get, the better our knowledge base would be. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I've often said this, a similar version of that quote as well is, when we stop learning, we stop living, or we stop breathing, because to your point, I think as people, we're always internally, we always want to grow and develop. I think that's what we're all seeking. So yeah, I would agree completely that we need to always keep learning. And once we're done learning, we're probably done breathing.
Absolutely. And to call you a busy person would be an understatement. I know you host a radio show and that you have your own specific brand, and you've been featured on many television shows and publications. So tell me, for you, what's the most fulfilling part of your workday?
I mentioned earlier that every day is different, but I will say that for me, what's the most fulfilling part is always whenever either I know it or somebody tells me that I've made a difference in somebody's life. Like, whether it's maybe I connected two people and now all of a sudden they're working together on a business partnership, or I had a message today from somebody, one of our students from our speaking program, and she just sent me an email saying woohoo and a question. And the woohoo was, I just landed my TEDx talk. And, she's been trying for a while. And that's, and knowing we've been working with her and played some small part in that, that is rewarding. Like, that's a fulfilling part of the day. So I think it's whenever I know that what I'm doing has the potential to make a difference for somebody, or when I receive a message from somebody telling me that I made a difference in their life.
And tell me, Corey, I want to share a little bit about myself. I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. It just simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. So it affects my physical movement and my muscles. So I'm curious to also get your opinion on your definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that folks with disabilities are fully integrated in today's society.
Well, I feel like, I don't want to simplify things or oversimplify it, but I feel like, we should, at the end of the day, we need to do what's right by everyone. And so to me, inclusion is doing what's right. I think that when we do what's right, we know. And when we don't do what's right, we know. And I feel like we just need to always do more of that. And so when I say what's right, I mean being inclusive, making sure that everyone feels included. If you're in a meeting with somebody and, and somebody, let's say, has a disability, you need to do what you can to make that person feel just as included as everybody else in the room and as comfortable with as everybody else in the room. And so I really think, again, I know it's an oversimplification, Kevin, but I really think it's just doing what you know is right in your heart. Like everybody has the right and should have the right to feel just as included as everybody else and just as involved as everybody else and contributing in the same way as everybody else. And so I really feel it just comes down to doing what you know in your heart is the right thing to do.
Yeah, one of my life mottos, Corey, is inclusion is the gateway to independence, because once we include people again, we broaden perspective and we get a larger knowledge pool to pull from. So that's always a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have, I think we all, it's like, it's just, you go by the numbers. 2 people working together and thinking about a subject is better than 1. 5 people is better than 2. And I say better, obviously, if they're on the right path, if they're synergy with each other, if they're working together, like I think always kind of 2 heads are better than 1. The efforts of 2 people typically are better than the efforts of 1. So I think, yeah, we all grow together and learn together by working together. And I think we can actually achieve more whenever we actually work together. So yeah, when you talk about that with inclusion being the idea of collaboration and working together towards a similar goal, I think it's always going to be more powerful than having only one person work on something.
Yeah, absolutely. And Corey, tell me, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what a life and professional fulfillment means for you.
So, I feel like they are kind of linked and they are separate, meaning, personal and professional fulfillment, if I kind of separate those. Professional fulfillment to me these days means something a lot different than it used to. Before, it used to be, if I was working on a book, I thought professional fulfillment in that area would be holding the finished book in my hand. That's, fulfillment. Then what I come to learn over time is the journey, so working on the book, every aspect of building the book ultimately now fulfills me more than holding the book in my hand. And that was a hard process to learn, because what happened was early on in my life, when I was working towards the goal, the destination of the book, I was never fulfilled while I was working on it. And then I would get the book done, and the first thing I would say was, next, what's next? And want to move away from the book. So finally, I had to recognize a way to become fulfilled at each part of the process. Again, so I'll call that the journey itself. So now all of a sudden for me, the journey is the destination. And so now professional fulfillment to me is every little thing I do toward a bigger goal. Personal fulfillment is really, at the end of the day, I have 2 children and a girlfriend. We have our own little family. And for me, personal fulfillment these days is knowing that I can take the time and will take the time to spend with my children and to help them grow and develop and actually have a family life with them. Because, when I was growing up, my father wasn't really a part of my life. And so I didn't really have that kind of fulfillment or that kind of experience as a family. Just my mother raised me as a single mother. And so to know that I can give to my children, maybe in a way that I didn't receive, that's personal fulfillment. So they're definitely completely, I would say, separate.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, you brought up the fact of you're an author, and I know you've written multiple best-selling books. So tell me, what's the greatest message that you hope to deliver through your written word, and what sort of fulfillment do you get through writing?
So the one book that still is, out of all the books, is still the one that I constantly go back to as my main book. Like, I constantly view it as my book, like the book that I worked toward for years and years. And it's the book I still keep telling people about all these years later, is a book called The Book of Why and How. And so the underlying message in that book really is, you start, like I mentioned this earlier, but the high achievers, the top peak performers, they live on purpose every day. And we all can be doing that. And so the Book of Why and How is attempting to show you how to find your why, and then what to do once you found it. And that's really, to me, living on purpose and living your purpose every day. So that's the message I would want people to get from that book. And really central for my books is, we all have a purpose we are called to do. And when we figure out what that is and we spend our time doing it, that's what life really at the core of it is all about. And the fulfillment I get out of writing is, now it's the journey that I mentioned. So it's like watching the story come to life is its own reward. So whenever I'm working on a book right now, but half done, and it's a fictional book, it's a parable. So it's, me crafting this story and creating these characters from scratch. And so for me now, the enjoyment is the journey. It's actually watching these characters come to life, and not even knowing what I'm going to say next and what the character is going to say next. That's fulfilling to me. Like, to know that each time I sit down to write, I created something new from scratch. That's fulfilling to me. So that's kind of how I would define both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final question for you, I'm going to combine for you in terms of what do you think is the greatest gift you get through living life, and how do you think you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined?
So, these are kind of tied together for me. So I define it kind of like this, Kevin. Whenever earlier in my life, I was wanting to surf on the surfboard. So I was wanting to be the guy on the surfboard that was making the difference, surfing in by myself. Now I feel that I can better serve by creating the waves for a bunch of other people to surf in. And so the difference to that is very profound, not profound even, but it's very significant, because originally it was, I want to impact lives directly myself. Now I want to impact other people's lives so that they can impact even more people. And as a result of that, I hope my legacy would be that I created a positive ripple in the lives of every person I interacted with for at least more than a half hour in my life. Like, if I've spent any amount of time with them, I would want the ripple from that to be something that's remembered. And by the way, it doesn't have to be that they remember that I provided the ripple. I don't have to be remembered for it to be a solid legacy, but I would just like to know that I left that mark where I created a ripple and now somebody else is continuing that ripple. So to me, that's what legacy should be for me.
Well, Corey, I have to tell you, you spent about a half an hour with me, and I've had a very enjoyable and memorable time talking to you about your life's journey. And I'm curious, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
So what I'll do is I'll give your listeners, and this is completely free, but I'll give your listeners a gift, and it'll also help them connect with me further as well. And the gift is my audiobook for that book I mentioned. So the full audiobook, people can find it at thebookofwhyaudio.com. So again, thebookofwhyaudio.com, and they can go there and grab themselves a copy of the book. So and like I say, the audio version of the book, and again, completely free. So I would say, that's my gift. And when people go there and grab that book, then they can, they'll be in my network, and we'll be able to connect going forward as well.
Fantastic. Well, Corey, I really want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me to talk about fulfillment, influence, living a fulfilled life. Your time, energy, and efforts in this space, and on my behalf, are most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I've had an absolute pleasure, and thanks for all the great work you're doing in the world. Keep it up, my friend, and thanks once again.